listening to Everyday Engineering, the City of Madison's engineering podcast where we talk about infrastructure. Complex topics explained simply, from the water that flows down your drain to the rain and snow that drains into the lakes. By way the curbs and streets we design. City engineering touches your life in so many ways. Explained right now in Everyday Engineering. We do a dredging project to area water. It means we scoop out the mud and the weeds and sediment from the bottom of the space to improve water quality. Now, that's a very, very basic way of describing how dredging works and necessary maintenance process. But what isn't so simple is when bodies of water we dredge have living animals in them, like frogs and snakes and salamanders and herptiles. Oh, we're going to talk about it all today. We have Sarah Lerner from the City of Madison Engineering Division, landscape architect, colleague of mine. We're going to talk all things. This is a really unique project, Sarah, Wexford Pond. But before we kind of dig into the mud and the dredging and the herptiles, what exactly do you do for our division, for anybody who's not familiar with who you are and what you do?
Thanks, Hannah. Thank you for having me. So my background started in landscape architecture. I graduated from the University of Wisconsin-Madison in 2005 with a degree in landscape architecture. I then worked for private engineering firms looking at a lot of park and recreation facilities, but I also did a lot of stormwater utility design from the landscape and ecological restoration perspective. Mm-hmm. Since then, my background has expanded to be more of like a system-wide landscape background. So I am one semester away from getting my graduate certificate in sustainable cities and communities from Harvard University's Extension School.
You didn't tell me that. That's huge. That's incredible. Yeah, congratulations on almost getting there too.
Thank you. I have certifications in a variety of different sustainable programs, LEED certification, as well as the Envision Sustainable Professional Certificate. So that's kind of my background, and what I do for the engineering division today is...
day to day, what do you do?
So I started at the city in 2010, at the engineering division, I think 2021, and I kind of do a myriad of work. So I manage projects such as pond, greenway, terrace rain garden constructions, mainly focusing on the green infrastructure side of projects. I manage a lot of the GIS data that's related to our ponds and greenways and our watershed studies, and I help work with prioritizing some of the projects for the capital budget.
Oh gosh, okay, so a lot of things.
A lot of things, a wide variety.
Yes. Wexford Pond being one of them, one of the projects. Location, for anybody not familiar, north of Old Sauk Road, east of the Beltline, Madison West Side by High Point Road.
Yep.
That hits it right on the...
Yep. Right
there. That is the location of the Wexford Pond Project, dredging project. What exactly is the project? What are we doing with the pond?
So the ponds out at Wexford are existing retention ponds, and this project is going to remove the existing sediment that has accumulated at the bottom of the ponds and also deepen a few sections of the ponds. It's called creating a forebay, so we can make the pond depth greater and have greater ability to go back in there and do routine maintenance dredging. So we'll be able to have these pockets of deeper area where we can get equipment in and just kind of scoop out the accumulated sediment in the future.
Huh. So that's important.
Yes.
Why is it important?
So it's important.
Softball question.
Yeah.
But if people aren't familiar, that's why I ask. I try to ask those types of questions.
My background is landscape architecture, so I always have to kind of punt a little to the stormwater engineers on the detailed and the chemistry regarding this.
Sure.
Because it's quite complex. So retention ponds are designed to settle out sediment. So during major storm events, they collect stormwater, they slow the stormwater down, and that process allows sediment to fall to the bottom of the pond. And the reason that is important is because a lot of that sediment, which is typically, some form of erosion or dirt particles, contains pollution. It contains, phosphorus-bound particles. And for our waterways, phosphorus is a major impact in our waterways. So the retention pond that we have, the system of retention ponds that we have, collects the sediment that includes a lot of phosphorus. And so by removing that, we increase our capacity to kind of collect and keep phosphorus from further heading downstream into our waterways.
Which causes a whole bunch of issues.
Exactly. Which causes a lot of issues.
We could probably do a whole nother 20 minutes just on phosphorus. But we are going to stick to Wexford Pond and dredging. Dredging, we don't see a lot of these projects, do we? Is it unique that we dredge, or is it just is it growing?
This is a large-scale dredging project. Yeah. We don't see many of these large pond dredging projects, but likely we will in the future.
Yeah. So I guess that kind of ties into, why is this unique? Anything else that makes Wexford Pond dredging unique?
Now, this is a softball question.
Yes. I'm trying to tee you up. You can hit the ball, or however you'd like. But truly, what makes this project unique? Because I think whoever's impacted by this project will want to know why are we doing this?
So what is unique about this project is the city is, for the first time, I think ever, we are doing a Herptile mitigation.
Herptile.
Herptile. So
not herptile?
You know what?
Herptile.
Could be herptile.
Okay. If you're watching this, please let us know. But yeah, no.
I am not a wildlife biologist,
no.
But that broader category includes reptiles and amphibians.
Got it. Okay. So that's like the salamanders, frogs,
turtles.
Snakes, turtles.
Mm-hmm. There may be a few snakes as well. We've included that.
Can't forget
this
them.
Project.
Can't forget you. But yeah, okay. And this also, you kind of explain why the necessity to dredge. So we talked about that, what it does, the impact of that. Briefly, I guess people sometimes, I think, forget the purpose of a pond. Again, if we can keep that part brief, because we will talk about ponds in a bigger conversation, probably at a different, drop my pen. Ponds just really get me going. But I think we'll talk about ponds and their purpose in another episode at a later date, but what is the purpose of this pond, or ponds, period, I guess?
So the purpose of this pond is to settle out that sediment.
Okay.
It's a man-made pond.
Okay.
It receives upstream water, so during the storm events, the stormwater will get into the pond, it'll stay there, the sediment will fall, and then it overflows, eventually making its way to Pheasant Branch Creek and Lake Mendota. So this is a man-made stormwater pond.
Interesting. I don't think, I'm still learning. Herptiles, turtles, frogs, snakes, salamanders, what will we do with them? Because we can't just scoop out all the sediment and the guck and the everything on the bottom. What are we going to do with all of them?
So
they're there. They're hanging out, and they're all probably relaxed at the bottom of Wexford Pond. But we want to be mindful of them too.
Yes, right now they're probably a little toasty from the extreme heat. So unlike other projects where we may have an opportunity to do work around a pond in summer or spring when these creatures are more active, this pond, because we are removing all the sediment and we're digging below the clay liner to put in a new clay liner and make the pond deeper, we have to do it in the winter when the ground is frozen, and we have to dewater the site. So for this specific project, we have conditions where the construction would happen during these creatures' normal resting period or hibernation period. So they don't have time or ability to move out of the disturbed area, unlike a lot of other projects where they'll be able to avoid the habitat, if it gets disrupted. So that's why we are particularly doing this at Wexford. It's because of those specific circumstances. And out at Wexford, while we didn't, we never introduced these species to these man-made ponds.
Sure.
But they make their way there, and at Wexford, they are definitely there. They are visible.
Oh my goodness. So we want to make sure they're safe.
Yeah. So you asked what we were going to do with them.
Yeah, what are we going to do with them?
So, the city does not have this background. We don't have staff wildlife biologists, so we solicited some expert opinions on how to address this. We wrote an RFP that had rough guidelines and then really solicited input from wildlife biologists on the best methods to approach this.
And an RFP, a request for proposal.
Thank you, yes.
Just making sure it's decoding here.
So
So we asked for some help from the expert.
definitely need help on this topic. I don't even know how to pronounce Herptiles, so
Here we
definitely.
I think it's good to know that we are still learning. We are interested in learning, and we're also trying to be thoughtful and giving attention to all the animals and wildlife that lives in that space. So we ask the experts to help advise us. We're not going to run in there and try to dredge without being mindful of the wildlife.
Absolutely, we shouldn't be doing anything that we're not confident on
Right.
the approach. So we actually, we got several proposals, and the firm that was selected was Heartland Ecological Group, and they partnered in their submittal with, I'm going to get his name right, Dr. Joshua Kapfer, and he's an Herptile expert. I believe he teaches at UW-Whitewater and has written books about Wisconsin's amphibians and reptiles.
What an amazing resource.
That's great. So that team came up with some approaches for what we can do. So the first thing we are doing, or what actually we already did, is install exclosure fencing.
Okay.
So exclosure fencing is recommended by the DNR. They have a specific detail for it. And that's mainly to keep new populations from entering the pond.
Okay.
So it's cordoning it off. They bury the fence a little bit into the ground so that we're not getting new turtles. It's primarily for turtles coming into the pond before we do the work.
Yeah.
The next step, which we are doing today, is we're doing some meander surveys. And meander surveys are where we have biologists, this is the firm that the city hired, walk through the shoreline and the shallow areas of the pond, and actually they do this at dusk. They have headlamps, they have capture nets, and they wear rubber gloves, and they collect the actual animals. And what's interesting is after they collect them, they separate them in...
Gently.
Yes.
Yes. We want to be mindful of that.
They separate them based on species into climate-controlled containers, and they are only in there for about an hour, and then they re-release them, downstream in this particular instance at a different City of Madison-owned property. So that will be happening tonight, and they initially had estimated that we probably would get about 70% of Herptiles with that meander survey. So in addition to the meander survey, they also trap the turtles through water hoops and water traps. And this was their recommendation to do because they mentioned that it is it's a safer, less stressful way to catch turtles than what you can see like on the DNR recommendations for turtle pits. And these are in-water traps that, capture the turtles. They're checked every 24 hours, and once, they're found, then they release them downstream into the downstream property the city has. And this will run for about 5 days. And then we'll kind of redo this same progression of survey and turtle traps throughout the summer. And then construction for the project will begin in November. So hopefully by that time, most of those species have been relocated.
So there's going to be multiple times that they'll be there capturing and being gentle. Okay, so that gives me some ideas to plan from an information standpoint, but that's good. For people that are concerned about the animals, can you just shed some light on maybe that part of it? Whether it means, obviously, we've chosen somebody very, the entity to help us who know, they're experts. They're being kind and gentle to the animals. Can you just, I know they're not animals. I don't know, Herptiles. Please write in. Please write in and let us know. But can you just kind of shed some light on that approach, I guess, that part of the approach?
Right. So, not being, this is not my specialty at all. I had reached out to some experts, and there's actually a certification that people who do this type of work have to go through. It's primarily geared towards endangered species. But so that's kind of what we catered our RFP for. I don't know the specifics of how they handle this. We will have hopefully some video and photos to share with people after tonight's.
Yeah.
But I mean, I am not able to really comment on the safety other than that they ensure that, you have these creatures that are only in this container for about an hour, and then they're released back into the wild. So,
I mean, we're not just hiring people who enjoy working with turtles, is what I'm saying. They're trained
all
people.
Biologists, yeah.
Yes.
So it's a staff of 3 biologists overseen by the PhD, who's an expert in turtles. And
they're experts in making sure that everybody's all safe.
It's great that, we have this resource available, and this is a field that, people are involved in, and it's not uncommon practice. So it's something that we can use. Hopefully this will be a good protocol, or a good, not really protocol, a good example of what we can do in the future.
Well, I am very interested. Can't wait to see how it all works out and share anything else you want to talk about Wexford Pond. We talked about timing, we talked about Herptiles, we've talked about the location, the work. Anything else you want to mention about this type of work that I didn't ask you that you want to make sure you mention?
I think that covers it. This is, when you think of like stormwater utility projects, they don't seem that exciting, but the work that we do here.
What do you, how dare you? It's the whole premise of our podcast, Sarah.
Well, that's why I appreciate the chance to speak on this, because I don't think people realize how important dredging a pond actually is to the environment and to waterways, and the steps that we take to make sure that we're doing this in a responsible way.
You hit it right on the head there. I think, yes, absolutely. Thank you for taking time to explain all of this, purpose, necessity, all the deets.
Thank you for having me.
Yes, of course. Thank you for listening. Thank you for watching. If you have any questions, want to stay connected on this project, we do have a project page on the City of Madison projects portal for Wexford Pond. You can just type it into your Google and I'm sure you'll get there. Otherwise, you can reach out to either me or Sarah if you have questions about this project, because as always, we are a resource for you every day in engineering.